Honestly, people have been begging me for a video about Pastor Rob for an unreasonably long time. I've already done videos on Pastor Jeff, on the Cooper family, not all of them, of course. But Pastor Rob is that character who only showed up for a really short amount of time in the whole Young Sheldon series. And the funny thing is, he's actually a pretty interesting character that they basically never developed. The truth is, he's the most destructive person in the entire Cooper family. You'd think it would be Brenda Sparks, or Pastor Jeff, or even George with all his screw-ups, or Mary who loves God and sees nothing else. But no. Pastor Rob smiles, holds her hand, quietly prays with a married woman, and tells her, "For you, always." He's that young guy who, in Mary's eyes, was the savior of her family. He's the man she saw as her escape from all the chaos going on around her, even an escape from her own husband. Some viewers see him as a sweet, progressive priest, and some see him as a creep with a porn mustache. The weirdest part is, both sides are wrong. He's kind, but not in the way we're used to seeing it. He's not a villain at all, but he's the one who destroyed Mary and George's marriage way more effectively than any open affair could have. For a long time, I thought Rob was just a good guy who got caught in an awkward situation. A handsome pastor that a married woman fell for, that happens sometimes. But then I started lining up all his scenes, one after the other, and I realized the same exact mechanism was at work every single time. Every time Pastor Rob has a chance to back off, step away, or set boundaries with Mary, he doesn't take it. He doesn't do anything villainous. He doesn't kiss Mary, and she doesn't physically cheat with him. He doesn't talk her into leaving her family. To me, he's just having fun and trying to help Mary in some way. But honestly, every kind thing he does takes George's wife away from him a little more. First, it was emotional closeness. Mary spent more time with Pastor Rob than with her own husband. Then, trust. Then Mary started getting jealous of Pastor Rob as a man. I mean, you're a married woman with a happy family. Why are you jealous of some young pastor talking to other women? And then Pastor Rob took George's professional respect from him. And in the end, Mary herself. Even though she physically stayed next to George, her mind was always on Pastor Rob. This isn't villainy with a knife in your pocket like we're used to seeing. It's worse. Way worse. It's that nice guy who looks like he isn't doing anything wrong, but every single one of his actions reveals his true self. The one he hides from everyone, the kind of thing a normal person would never suspect. You have to look at this character deeper, view him from the outside, and realize that all his actions are villainous, not kind at all. Welcome back to Cooper's Couch. Get comfortable. Let me explain what I actually mean by all this. Let's start with a moment that most fans scroll right past, the episode about the rumors leaking out about Mandy's pregnancy. Mary is in total panic mode. She's scared of judgment from the church, her friends, the whole town. But in that moment, George, her husband, gives her absolutely solid advice. He tells her not to stress about it. Hypocrites are going to talk about you no matter what. You have to be strong and keep your head held high. Honestly, that's great advice. I'd say the same thing in that situation, because that's life, nobody is immune to it, and you shouldn't have to take responsibility for what your kids do. Sure, you're responsible for your kids up to a certain age, but to me, a girl getting pregnant is a more serious, more adult act, and at the very least, shaming the mom for it is just wrong. But you know what Mary does? She blows George off. Then she secretly calls Rob, meets up with him, and Rob tells her the exact same thing. Only now Mary takes his words with gratitude, practically with tears in her eyes. And honestly, all George needed to do was say the same thing but throw in a mention of God so she'd actually hear him, because otherwise Mary doesn't hear anything. The thing is, Rob isn't all that wise. His words aren't even that wise. This situation isn't about the words at all. Mary has already mentally moved out of the marriage. Her husband can be telling her the absolute truth, but she won't hear him because the spot for the person she listens to is already taken by a young pastor. And then the main thing happens. The rumor spreads through the whole town anyway. The church is boycotting her. She's sitting alone in an empty room. And what does she do? She picks up the phone and calls Rob again. Not her husband, not her mom, not a friend, the pastor. And she asks, "Do you have time to talk?" And he says, "For you, always." I didn't even notice it before. But For you always is not a pastor's line. A pastor doesn't talk like that. A pastor says, "Of course, my child," or "come to the church," or some other neutral thing. But for you always is the kind of thing a partner says, a husband, a boyfriend. It's what a husband says to his wife. And the most painful part is, Rob knew exactly what place her husband held in her life. Rob didn't slip up. That was a conscious offer. Not a sexual one, but an emotional one. He offered Mary the version of a husband that George couldn't give her anymore. Just without the consequences, without the bills, without the kids, without the routine. And she takes it. Because when a married woman in crisis calls someone other than her husband, she's already picked someone else. And Rob just confirmed her choice. That's what his kindness is. It doesn't heal, it just slides right into someone else's spot. I thought about Pastor Rob for a long time. And honestly, everything that happens with him isn't just a one-season story, it explains everything we saw in The Big Bang Theory. In that show, adult Mary spent years dragging the late George through the mud, calling him a drunk, a cheater, useless, stomping on his memory right in front of grown-up Sheldon. And viewers of that show just took it all at face value, because they didn't have another version. Then young Sheldon came out, and it turned out George was a tired, loving, sacrificing guy. I actually already made a video on him, and it did really well, by the way, so thank you for that. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out on my channel. George worked all kinds of jobs, sometimes 2 at once, coached the football team, and genuinely tried to be a good dad. Even when he got fired, he found other places to work so he could provide for his family. And of course, the obvious question is, why did Mary trash him so hard, and what for? He really wasn't like that. But the answer is way simpler. Mary didn't trash George because he was bad. She trashed him because she needed to justify Rob to herself. George suddenly died of a heart attack right when he and Mary had finally made up. And what is Mary left with? The memory of how she spent entire seasons turning her back on him, sneaking off to smoke with another man, having erotic dreams, taking advice from Rob instead of her husband, calling Rob instead of George, sitting on the family couch with Rob and holding his hand. There was no physical affair, but emotionally she was gone. And when her husband died, she was left alone with that realization. Here's a little psychology fact for you. You know what someone does when they can't look in the mirror? They smash it. Mary spent years telling Sheldon his father was a monster. Not because she believed it, but because if George was a monster, then she had the right to flirt with Rob. It means her emotional affair wasn't really an affair. It was an escape from a terrible marriage. That's classic psychological defense through rewriting history. And the scariest part is, it worked. The Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory actually believes his dad was an alcoholic and a cheater. Mary literally rewrote Sheldon's childhood, not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she couldn't live with the truth about herself. Rob, the quiet, gentle, kind pastor. He's the root cause of this whole thing. His kindness turned a small Texas woman into someone who slanders her dead husband for years, just so she could live with herself. That's what scares me. This is actually a story about how one thoughtful person ruins the rest of another person's life without ever doing a single bad thing. Looking at this from another angle, obviously The Big Bang Theory came out way before young Sheldon, and when that show was being written, the writers weren't planning on a young Sheldon, where George gets shown from a different angle. Of course, the young Sheldon writers had to know what was said about the dad in The Big Bang Theory, but showing him the way he was described in The Big Bang Theory wouldn't have made sense, because the show would have turned from a sweet, fun, interesting one into a psychological horror story where the dad really is a tyrant. Either way, I love the young Sheldon version of George way more than the one described in The Big Bang Theory. But there's nothing stopping us from psychologically connecting these two shows this way because we're looking at the psychological side of the show, not what the writers originally intended. There's one more scene that puts a period on this whole story, the hospital scene. Mandy is giving birth, and George, Mary, Brenda, and Rob all end up in the same place, and that the writers did that on purpose. George and Mary scream at each other out loud about affairs for the first time, and George throws it in her face. I see how you light up every time that pastor is around. Mary, with her back against the wall, finally says out loud what she's been denying the whole time. Maybe so. She held those words in for a season and a half, hiding them behind prayer, pastoral chats, spiritual guidance, and excuses like, "We're just talking." She immediately tries to defend herself, swearing nothing happened and she'd never physically cheat. But George catches her on the double standard, pointing out that she thought he was capable of cheating when he himself never did. In that moment, you can really see what stage each of them is at. George was fighting a real temptation. Brenda was literally trying to drag him home, but he stopped himself every time. Mary didn't have any physical offers from Rob, but emotionally she was already sleeping with him, living in his world. It flips your whole understanding, because originally the cheater in this family was always supposed to be George. That's basically the canon of the show and the words of adult Sheldon. But it turns out the moral scoreboard is way more complicated than that. And none of this was started by Mary or George, it was started by Rob. By not walking away in time, by coming over to a married woman's house, sitting next to her on the couch, holding her hand, and praying. Prayer is the killer move here. When George stands up in the living room and tries to push back, Mary says, "We were just praying, that's all." George is a simple Texas guy. He can't compete with prayer or forbid his wife from praying with her pastor. Any objection he makes automatically gets framed as an attack on her faith, and Rob knows that perfectly well. Sitting on George's couch and holding his wife's hand, he knows for a fact that George can't kick him out without a scene. That's the sinister kindness, the mask he hides behind. It's the perfect invisible weapon. You can't say he's committing a crime or doing something bad because everything is covered in good intentions. No normal man with no interest in another guy's wife would have anything to do with a married woman like this. If he's her pastor, like Pastor Jeff, they can meet at the church and only talk about religious stuff. Otherwise, what's the point of all the cute moments and the flirting? Remember how I said Rob takes everything from George one by one? Fast forward to season 6, when George's school team is in a slump, and someone from the administration invites Rob to come pray with the players before the game. Rob shows up, prays, and suggests some kind of play to the man who's dedicated his whole life to sports. George is furious because he's the coach, and this is his territory too. This was a huge hit to George's ego, obviously. Not only is he literally taking his wife, but now he's coming onto his turf at the school and suggesting plays. And George, just to teach Rob a lesson, runs the play without even thinking it through. He thinks it's going to fail. But it works, and the team wins, and the whole school, all the players, all the fans, they hoist not the coach, but Pastor Rob on their shoulders. George comes home crushed and tries to explain it to Mary. Pay attention. This is the most interesting part, what his wife tells him. She takes Rob's side. She tells her husband, "He helped you win? Why are you mad?" The truth is, Rob didn't coach. He didn't stand out there in the heat. He didn't draw up the plays, but he helped. That's a total dismissal of her husband in favor of another man. If my girlfriend ever said that to me, I'd think hard about whether to keep dating her. And what does Mary do? She doesn't even notice. To her, Rob is in the category where he's right by default, and George is wrong by default. Rob didn't come into the house and steal his wife. That would have been too obvious. He came to her husband's workplace and stole his professional dignity. Again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's a really overused phrase, but it fits perfectly here. And the worst part is, the wife sides with Rob. That's humiliation for a man that you can't even get revenge for. Because technically Rob did nothing wrong. He was invited, he came, he prayed, the play worked, and Mary just shared her opinion. You can't see it when you look at things one at a time. But altogether, it's like George has been castrated. And in this whole storyline, there's one favorite moment of mine. The bowling alley scene, after Mary's been kicked out of the church. Mary takes a job as Brenda Sparks' assistant at the bowling alley. And then Rob walks in on a date with a young, pretty girl, not married Mary like she'd been dreaming of. And this girl, to the horror of everyone there, recognizes Mary and says, "You used to be my babysitter." It's so funny and so awkward. Mary gets her face dragged through the mud, and all her fantasies just die. It's the perfect written slap in the face. In 1 second, Mary stops being the woman a young pastor likes in her own eyes, and turns into the aunt who used to babysit his date. The age gap suddenly becomes real. Mary goes into the back room and cries. And that same Brenda, who Mary looks down on because of her thing with George, ends up being the only person who tells her the truth to her face. She tells Mary she's pining over the pastor and is in love with him. Mary hysterically denies it and hides behind her married status, to which Brenda just coolly notes that she was married too. But it never stopped her from looking around. And this is the most important moment in the whole show. The most sinful person in this situation, the woman Mary treats like a walking temptation, ends up being the only one who sees the truth. Brenda showed Mary the truth, but Mary, the righteous Christian, is blind to it. Honestly, that's what the Rob storyline exists for, to show who Mary really is, that her religion isn't spiritual superiority, it's just another form of self-deception. Like Meemaw said, Mary used to be a wild one, dressed in weird outfits and was a punk or something like that. And religion is her defense and her self-deception. You really should check out my video on Mary Cooper. I think a lot of things will click for you. So what happens in the end? Mary goes drinking with Brenda at the bar, gets wasted, comes home, and drunkenly tries to have sex with George. You get what's happening here. She's redirecting her attraction for the pastor onto her husband because she can't have the pastor, but the husband is always there. Psychologically, that's called transferred arousal. In plain terms, George in that moment is just a stand-in for the person his wife actually wants. Honestly, can there be a worse humiliation for a man? The most painful thing is George doesn't even realize it. He's confused, but happy because his wife hasn't come at him like that in a long time. The truth is, she didn't come to him. She came through him to someone else. Now about Rob's final exit. Everyone is like, what a noble move. He left for Arkansas, didn't even come back for George's funeral, left Mary alone, respected her grief. It all sounds nice, but I see it differently. Rob didn't leave because he was noble. He left because at the hospital, during the Cooper screaming match, he saw the real cost of his kindness for the first time. He stood in that hallway, listened to a husband and wife throwing affair accusations at each other, and realized he was the one who started all of this. Not because he did anything, but because he was just there. And then he quietly leaves. He doesn't say goodbye, doesn't call, doesn't say anything. A job in Arkansas just happened to come up, he had to leave, and that became the perfect way to end it all. I think Pastor Rob realized what he had done and finally understood that his smile, his understanding, and his "for you always" weren't help. They were a destructive force. And the only way to stop destroying was to disappear completely. He never shows up again. Even when Mary's husband dies and she's at her most vulnerable, Rob still doesn't reach out because he knows if he comes back, he'll finish what he started. For the first time in his whole storyline, he makes a choice that isn't in his own favor, and that's the only truly kind thing he does in the entire show. Just leave. And this completely changes how I see Pastor Rob and Mary. I used to look at Rob as a cute, maybe slightly clingy guy and pastor, but now I get what he actually did. In a season and a half, he rebuilt Mary Cooper's entire psyche. He turned her from an anxious but loving wife into the woman who, in The Big Bang Theory, will spend decades slandering her dead husband so she doesn't drown in her own guilt. Pastor Rob didn't destroy the marriage, he just rewrote Sheldon's childhood after the fact. All the words about how dad was a drunk and a cheater, all those moments where Mary acted like a fanatic in the adult version, none of that was born in Texas. It was born in that hospital hallway in that one phrase, "maybe so," when Mary basically confessed to George. And like always, when my breakdowns wrap up and the final script is written, I really can't watch the show the same way anymore. All these characters play out completely differently for me now. My own analyses make me think way deeper about these characters because everything works differently than we thought on the first watch of young Sheldon. And the scariest part is, people like this just hide behind kindness. In real life, I've met plenty of people who seem genuinely kind and good, but every one of their actions actually has a destructive effect. Thanks for being on the Cooper's couch with me. See you in the next videos. Bye everyone.